of my other screen now. Basically, we're going to go over setting up a new agency card and some information about the agency that's important to make sure you have set up correctly. The main purpose for setting up agencies, of course, is that they are entities that will receive product from the food bank. It is possible to set up one or many agencies linked to a single parent agency. It is also possible just to set up agencies and not set up parent agencies. So if you always have a one-to-one relationship with an agency, then you would not need to set up parent agencies. But if you have, like, say, a parent agency that then handles multiple what we call programs underneath that, then you could set up a parent agency and then agencies that are associated with that parent agency. So each food bank setup may be slightly different, but you have the option for setting up parent agencies if you desire. Today we're going to go over just setting up agencies, as there's not a whole lot to setting up a parent agency card, and if you're using those, then it's usually discussed during implementation time, the setup for the parent agency. So setting up the agency card, to access agencies, you would go to Departments, then Agencies and Receivables, and Agency Relations, and then under the List option you'll see Agencies. And this will bring up a list of all the agencies that are currently set up in the system. If it was a brand new implementation, then this may be blank unless they were brought over from your previous version. And this list will show several different things about the agency, and you can customize what shows here and how it's displayed. But when you're ready to create a new agency, then you would simply click on the new icon in the action pane. Or if you don't have the icon in the action pane, you would click on Actions and then New. And this will open up a new screen to create the agency card. If you are letting the system create the agency numbers, then you would simply hit Enter, and the system will generate the new agency number. However, if you are customizing the agency numbers based on your information, like you want to give it a name, or if you want to give it a certain number series based on the type of agency, then you would have it set up so that you would have manual numbering for your agencies. I clicked on the ellipses to see what this one is set up as, and it is set up with both default and manual checked. Typically, you would have one or the other number series selected, but in this case, we're going to create our agency name, and since it is checked for manual, then I can type in what I want the agency to be. So I'm going to put an A to identify that it's an agency, and then I'm just going to call it Connie Test. And again, if you're using parent agencies, then at this point you can link your agency to a parent agency. And if you don't know the parent agency number, you can click in the drop-down, and you can select the parent agency here. Or if you're not linking to a parent agency, then you would leave this blank. In the name field, here's where you will enter the name for the agency, and this can be a combination of text or alpha and numeric. It's probably it's probably a good idea not to use special characters in the name field, and the reason for that would be if you ever want to search or filter on the name field, if you use special characters like well, ampersand, I know a lot of people will use ampersand in name fields. However, if you were searching on a name field or filtering on a name field and you wanted to look for a specific name and it has an ampersand in it and you use that in your filter, then it can skew what you're filtering on. So try to keep the name as clear as possible, or I should say as clean as possible, but if necessary, you can use some characters. Yeah, dash obviously is fine, an underscore is fine, capital and lowercase letters, things like that. But we're just going to call this one Connie Test. But try to avoid things like asterisks and if possible, ampersands, but pipe signs, anything that, like I said, that could be used in filtering. The name to field can be used if necessary to identify additional information. In the name field, the maximum length is 50 characters, and this is what's typically printed on the invoices and statements and whatnot for the agency. So that's what you will want to show in the name field, and it's often the, what do you want to call it, the specific or business name for the agency, whereas they might go by another name, and you can put that either in the name to field or you can put it in the search name field over here. So if this also goes by Connie's Bakery, for example, then I could put that in the search name field. I could also put it in the name to field if I wanted to. So the name to field could also be used, like if your name one field is longer than 50 characters, then you could put the additional name in the name to field. And as long as you had your reports modified to include the name to value, then it would print the entire agency name on the report. In the address field, here you would enter the physical address, street address of the agency. If you're, obviously sending bills to the agency, you want that to go to a physical address. It might be a P.O. box if that's where they want the bills to go. So you would enter that information here. And then you can either select the city or type the city in. If the city is already available in the list, then you would add it here. If not, you can type in the city. And if the zip code, as you can see, zip code's not currently in here, so I would have to add a new zip code if I wanted to. And I just added that to the zip code list so that I can select that zip code on my agency card. The country region code, this would be the country such as U.S. If country is entered, it will print on the agency statements and invoices. So if you want the country code to display, then you would fill that in. It's not necessary to have this populated. The phone number field, obviously this is where you would enter the phone number for the agency. Whatever you enter here in the general FAST tab in the phone number field will automatically populate the phone number field on the communication FAST tab. And so we'll go ahead and fill in a phone number here. And what I would suggest when filling in the phone number is that it doesn't really matter what format you use, but that you keep it consistent. So if you're going to put parentheses around your area code and then put the actual 7-digit number after that with a dash in between, then keep that consistent across all agency entries. Or if you're going to put in, say, just the numbers without any dashes, then you would keep that consistent like that. Or whatever you decide to use as your formatting for the phone number, I would try to keep that consistent across all agencies. And if you look at a list and you show the phone number and you see that they vary, so for example, if we minimize this and we look at the phone number list here, we can see that it's been set up to use a format of area code with a dash, although this one's missing, it's got an extra space in there, the three numbers and the 4 numbers at the end, and so that's what we'll want to do to mimic that. So we'll go back to our agency card here, and I will actually put in those dashes so that it follows the same. And you'll notice right now I'm entering it in the Communication FAST tab. If I make a change here, it makes the change here in the General FAST tab. These two are the same field. So if you make the change up here, it will make it in this field as well. If there is an additional extension for that agency, you can go ahead and add it here. The primary contact field, the primary contact person for this agency would be entered in this field. It will create a contact card for them. If there's already a contact card created, you would select it from the primary contact number. You'll notice that one that was generated automatically as soon as I set up the card. But if I wanted to put in an actual name here, it creates a new contact as soon as I do that. So now if I click on this down arrow, you can see that it created that contact. So you can either select from an existing contact, or you can create a new contact by typing in the contact field, which will then create that contact card and populate the primary contact number with that information. The dormant field, if you check this box, it will hide the record from the list view. So if you're looking at an agency list and you don't see an agency in the list view and you know that the agency does in fact exist, one possibility is that the agency has been marked as dormant by checking this box. So you want to be sure that you don't accidentally mark an agency as dormant, because they will disappear from this view here in the list view unless you display dormant agencies. And to display dormant agencies, you would go to the list view and then go to agencies, choose advanced filter, and see how a default is where dormant is no. So you would change this to display, oops, I got no and no, no and yes, which will show both those agencies where dormant is checked and where dormant is not checked. So any agencies that are marked as dormant will now display. So just be sure when you're creating the new agency card that you don't accidentally set them as dormant. The search name field, as I mentioned before, it will populate automatically with the name field over here. If you call that agency by something else, then you can set this in the search name so that when you're looking for that agency, you can search for it not only by the actual name or the number, but also by their search name. And that will help like when you're looking in a list view, such as over here. So if we wanted to look for this agency, we could choose our option, and I don't see that search name is currently showing, so we would have to show it here in order for that to work. So if I go to choose columns and add search name, then now it's going to show in my list, and I can add a sort by search name. And let's say I want to look for Connie's bakery. So I can just type in bakery, except for I think I spelled that wrong there. And now it finds it based on the fact that I'm looking for search name. So you don't necessarily have to know the name of the agency or the number of the agency, but if you know the search name, you can use that in the filter here to find your agency in a list. I'm going to clear that out, and we're going to go back to the agency card. The balance field, as you can see, this field is not something that you can type in. It's actually a flow field is what we call it, because it summarizes all of the open ledger entries, and then it gives you that total balance remaining for that agency in this field. And if there's a balance remaining, you can click on this, and it will bring up the open agency ledger entries, and you would be able to see what ledger entries they currently have open that make up that balance. The credit limit field is where you can enter the maximum credit in dollar amount that can be extended to the agency. And Ceres will use this field to perform a test when you fill out journals, quotes if using, orders, and invoices. Typically this is going to be journals or invoices, or orders, because most people don't use quotes, although it is possible to do so. And what it does is it tests the agency order header and individual agency order lines to see whether the credit limit has been exceeded. So if you leave a field blank, then it basically considers the credit limit as unlimited for the agency. So any orders coming in, no matter how much the total dollar amount is, will not kick up a warning. If you set a credit limit on the agency, say $2,000 or $500, then as you are entering a new agency order, or if you're using Agency Express and the order comes into Ceres and it's going to go over the credit amount that's extended to this agency, then when the user actually puts that order into food bank only processing, they will get a warning that the agency has exceeded their credit. And then if they have the proper user setup permissions and they wish to override that, then they would be able to say, yes, I still want to continue with this order, or they could then remove quantities off the order to get them down under their credit limit. So you always have control over what goes out to the agency and whether or not you extend them more than what their credit limit is on the card. But that's where you would set this. And like I said before, if it's 0, then it will be considered unlimited. And if you set a dollar amount, then it will take into account their balance. It will take into account any shipped, not invoiced, any outstanding orders, and then it will come up with what's considered the remaining available credit for that agency. And as long as it's more than $0 and their order doesn't exceed the difference between their credit limit and their balance in open orders, then you would be able to continue with the order. Salesperson code field, not used by a lot of food banks. However, if you want to track who normally handles the agency's account, then you could set up salespersons into the database and then assign the salesperson code to the agency. And that might be helpful if you have, let's see, 3 to 5 people in your agency relations office, and you want to be able to see, okay, which agencies are currently assigned to this person versus which agencies are assigned to another. So you could assign a salesperson code, and then you could run a report and filter by salesperson code and see all of those that meet the criteria of salesperson equals this user. Again, not necessary to use this, but you have the option to. Excuse me, the fund number field. This is a default for any orders that are created for this agency. If you set a fund number here, then that will flow to the order or flow to a journal entry for this agency, and you can pick from the available funds that you have. And again, it's just a default. You can override it on orders if desired, but it will flow on all entries associated with this agency, and then it will be there for the order or the journal entry, but if you want to change it, you can. The FBC county code. This is a very important field. The FBC county code field is where you select the county for this agency. This field here reflects on the distribution pounds by county report. So when you are first setting up the agency, you want to make sure that you select the proper FBC county code before any entries to this agency are posted. So if you happen to leave the FBC county code blank and you distribute product to the agency, when those transactions post to the item ledger entry, they will post without an FBC county code. And then let's say at the end of the month you're running the distribution pounds by county report and you don't see your distributions for this agency on the report and you wonder why that is. It's because the distributions do not have a county code on them. So it can't put the distributions in the correct county on that report. So you want to make sure that when you're setting up the card that you select the correct county. And I'm not sure if we have any set up in here for Oregon, but it does not look like it. So I would have to create one. And I don't happen to know what the FIPS code is, but we'll assume that's the zip code. So then once you select your county, nope, I didn't like something I did there. Yep, it said it doesn't exist. So for the purposes of moving along, I'm going to try and select a different one. I probably would have just had to add it, but we will go ahead and move along there. So now I've selected the FBC county code. So any transactions that I do for this agency now will post with a county code of OR-WASH. And then when running the distribution pounds by county report, they will show up under that county's distributions. Unless, of course, this happens to be another food bank, and we'll get to that in a little bit later when we're looking at the Information Task tab. And there's some settings there that will also determine whether or not entries are included on the distribution pounds by county report. The FBC agency category code. This field will contain the food bank category code that can be associated with a UNC category code. So if we click on the drop down here, we'll see that there have been some agency category codes that have been set up here. And if we click on advanced, we'll see that they're linked to UNC agency categories. So you'll notice that this one's been set up as an FBC agency category of abused, but the associated UNC agency category is group home. So there's a list from Feeding America of agency categories for the UNC, also known as Unified Number Code. And you can assign as many FBC agency categories as you want. You can create all the ones that you want, but they have to be linked to the UNC agency categories that are defined by Feeding America. So we are going to choose disaster for ours. And this isn't used on any of the Feeding America reports that are currently in the system, like the distribution pounds by county or the quarterly poundage report, also known as receipts and distribution. However, you may need to run reports that are based on agency category, and this will define which agency category those entries for this agency will go into. The UNC activity status field is also very important. This field must be set up in order to do any transactions to the agency, and it also must be defined as one that allows posting if you are going to be using this agency with the Agency Express program. So you'll notice that if we open up the list of UNC activity statuses, that we have quite a few of them set up. And many of them allow posting. Now, this may not be the case in your database because you might put an agency in a status where you don't want to allow any posting for them. So you would pick a status that doesn't have a checkbox in this Allow Posting column. But typically, when you're setting up a new agency, you are going to want to set them up with the UNC activity status of active. So you would select that there. And like I said before, if you're coming in later and for some reason they're being put on hold because they haven't paid their quarterly dues or they haven't paid their balance or something like that, you can select a hold status, and you can leave it as a status that has allow posting, meaning you can still post payments from them, but maybe you don't want them to be able to create new orders. So you would select a status maybe that that they will see, that the users will see when they go in to do orders for that agency, and say, okay, oh, I know that this agency is on hold. Do I still want to create an order for them? Maybe I don't. And if they don't have override privileges and the status doesn't allow posting, then they wouldn't be able to create that order regardless. Typical statuses that you might see, and we had some weird ones in this particular training database, but active is common. Of course, that means it's an active agency of the food bank. Inactive AG is a common one, and that it means inactivated by the agency. So perhaps they don't want to be considered active anymore, so they notify the food bank, and then you set them up with an activity status of inactive AG. There's also inactive FB for inactivated by the food bank. And again, that would be if for some reason you are inactivating them because they've either overspent or they haven't paid bills or whatever reason, so you can inactivate them with that code. And then another one might be suspended. So maybe they're going to hopefully be ordering again soon or able to order again soon, but they just need to fulfill something like maybe their monitoring expiration or something like that, so you mark them as suspended. The agency approval date, this will be the first date that the agency was approved to order. So you can set that with either the date that you're creating the agency or another date that is associated with their approval date. The agency first order date field, and some of these you may not have on your screen. This is from what we consider a Jupyter object version. So if you're not on the newest object set, some of these fields may not show on your screen. If you don't see agency approval date and agency first order date, don't be worried too much. They're just additional information that I believe that was added in Jupyter, but I'm not 100% on that. The monitoring expiration date field, this is the field that contains the date that the agency activity review expires. So if they've had their monitoring done and you have a monitoring expiration date for them, then you would set that in this field. You can either use the calendar to set it, or you can simply type in the date. I'm just going to put it as a year from now. This blocked field here is a field that is used to designate which transactions are allowed for this agency. Typically, it's going to be set to blank, meaning all transactions are allowed. However, if you wish to block any types of transactions, then you can set this on the agency card. So if you want to block them from getting any shipments, then you would set it to ship. If you want to block them from being able to post invoices, so you could ship, but then you wouldn't be able to invoice the order. To me, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it's the options there. I guess if you block them from shipping, then you would be blocking them from invoicing as well. And then you could also block them for all transactions by choosing the all options. So according to my documentation, if you have it set on ship, the new agency orders and shipments cannot be created for the agency. However, any existing shipments that have not yet been invoiced can still be invoiced. So if you don't want them to have any orders created after this point in time that you set the ship option, then you would choose ship. And again, if they had any outstanding orders that had been shipped but not yet invoiced, you'd still be able to invoice them. The invoice option, in this case, if you selected invoice, new agency orders, new shipments, and new invoices cannot be created for this agency. However, existing shipments not yet invoiced can still be invoiced. And then if you select all, you can't do anything. So you can't even post a payment. So if they have an outstanding balance and they pay you, you would have to come in here and change the blocked status in order to post their payment. So just be careful when using this field. And also let me mention that the block field does not send any information to Agency Express. So you cannot use the blocked field for determining whether or not an agency can order online. The only thing that will determine that is their activity status and how you've set that activity status up on the configuration management page for Agency Express if you're using AE. The last date modified and last modified by are flow fields, and they update when key fields on the agency card are updated. Then it will update the last date modified, and it will update the last modified by as well. You'll notice here on the bottom of my General FAST tab that I have this little drop-down that says Show More Fields. If you have decided to hide some of the fields, then you will have this little drop-down here that says Show More Fields. So I click on that, and you'll see that it moved dormant over here. And I believe, let's see, what did it add? Name to, address to. Well, now I can't remember what was hidden before. I think it might have been address to. Nope. Contact. Well, it moved dormant over here. So something, oh, service zone code. So I had hidden service zone code. There's none set up. You could use service zone for, it's not like the same as a shipment method or anything like that, or an actual zone code, but you could use it for certain information. It's currently not being used, which is why I hid it. And again, this might be something for Jupyter, so I hid it from the screen. And you can hide fields on a screen by designing the form. So if you go up to the little Customize button at the top, and then customize the page, and then choose Fast Tabs, and then pick which Fast Tabs you want to display. If you're not using them, then you can hide them. And you can also modify an existing Fast Tab by clicking on that Fast Tab, clicking on Customize Fast Tab, and then if you don't want to show a particular field, you can remove that. And then the next time you open that screen, then it will, so in this case, on the Communication Fast tab, I hid a few things, so they won't show up here. I forget what that field was called, but it normally would have displayed here. So you can hide things. You can also promote different things, but we have a different class that goes over all of that. So we'll move on. Again, the Communication tab. It will populate the phone number from the General tab if it was entered there. You can enter the extension number here. It will flow here. If you have an email for the agency, then you can add it here. And if you are integrated with Outlook, then you could click on this little mail icon and start an email directly from the agency card. So if I wanted to put in an email address here, I could. I could also put in a home page. So if they have a web address for the agency, you can type that in here, and then if you've got a value, you can click on the link, and it will take you directly to whatever internet provider you're using, IE or Firefox or Chrome or whatever. It would open up their web page. Excuse me, got to take a quick water drink. Okay, in the invoice delivery email tab or field, you would fill in a recipient email address to send invoices to based on the document email option, which is over here, and we'll go over that in just a second. So whatever document email option you select, if you are sending invoice deliveries by email, then you would put in the email address here, and it must be a valid email address. So you would always want to make sure that you check it. And if you're copying it from another program, such as Excel, you want to make sure that you don't have extra spaces at the end because Excel has a habit of having those little squares at the end, but you can't see them when you populate it here. So if you hit, let's say you copy and then you paste in here, and if you hit the end button, that's end, not the letter N, but end, it will take you to the last character so you can see if there are extra spaces at the end. So just make sure that your emails are always clean. Otherwise, you will have issues when trying to send invoices via email. The invoice delivery email, CC, basically same as the invoice delivery, but if you want to have another person that it's sent to, then you would set that email address here. Same for statements, statement delivery email and statement delivery email, courtesy copy or carbon copy. And then for document email option, if you click on the down arrow, you'll see that there's several different options here. So if you leave this blank, then no invoice emails will be sent. You can still have values in the invoice delivery email and statement delivery email boxes, but it won't send any invoices via email or statements via email if you leave this blank. If you select on post only, then invoice emails will be sent if post is selected when posting the document. So you know how when you go to post an agency order, you have an option for post or post and print. You can also batch post agency orders. So if you select on post only and you happen to hit post and print on the agency document, then it would not send an email because your option is set to on post only. You could choose all posting, and then invoice emails will be sent regardless of whether post or post and print is used, or even batch posting. So if you don't care how it was posted and you want to send it via email, then you would select the all posting option. So on post and print only works the same as on post only, and only that it would be if you selected the post and print option. And batch posting would be if you use the batch posting option to post all of your agency orders, then if this was selected, your invoices would be sent via email. Manual with warning on post. This one is a little bit trickier. Invoice emails will be sent if actions, so this is from the agency order, if actions, functions, send order confirmation is selected from the agency order. Or if from a posted agency invoice, you go to actions, functions, send invoice. So you would get a warning when posting an agency order that an email is not going to be sent. And that's basically if you have set up order email sent on the shipping fast tab of an agency order, there's a little box there. You can see where it says if the order confirmation was previously sent. But this would be you'd actually have to go to a function, send order confirmation, in order to send to the email address listed in this field or this field. And then manual without warning on post, if you go to actions, functions, send order confirmation, there won't be a warning that will display, even if an order confirmation was previously sent, but it will go ahead and send the invoice to the email address at that time. So this one will give you a warning that whether if a email has already been sent, and this one will not. Okay, let's move on from there. On the Invoicing FAST tab, and let me go ahead and scrunch that up a little bit by collapsing those. On the Invoicing FAST tab, this Bill to Agency Number field, it's not used, so it's grayed out. You may have it hidden entirely on your Invoicing FAST tab. The Invoice Copies field, here you can enter the number of invoice copies, and when I say copies, I mean in addition to the original. That will always be printed out for an agency. So if you're printing an invoice, then you will always get one, because that's the original. But if you choose invoice copies of 1 here, then you would get the original plus 1 copy. So you would get 2. So you want to make sure if you're setting this up on the agency card that you don't also have invoice copies defined on the report that you're running, because if, let's say, you're running an agency invoice report and it's already set to give you an original and a copy, and the agency is also set to include a copy, then you would get an original plus 2 copies. So if you're wondering why you have so many of the same report printing out, you might want to check either the invoice copies on the agency card or the invoice copies on the actual invoice report. The invoice discount code is a discount code for the agency. It can be a maximum of 20 characters, both numbers and letters, and it is automatically defaulted or copied to the field from the agency number. I don't know a lot of people using invoice discount code, but if you wanted to use it, if you want the agency to have an individual invoice discount, then you would not change the contents of the field, but instead you would set up terms for the invoice discount code from the agency invoice discounts window. And if you want to see that window, you would go to, you would go to related information, and then to to distribution, and then invoice discounts. So if you want to set up invoice discounts, you can do that. If you want several agencies to have the same invoice discount, then you can replace this default invoice discount code with another one, and it can either be a code that's been previously set up on a different agency, or you can create a brand new one. And if you do select or create a new code, then you must be sure to set up the invoice discount terms for it. And then after that, you would enter the new code in this field for every agency that you want to use that same discount on. The copy cell to address to quote from, this is an option field that contains the type of contact, either company or person, and it's pre-selected as company by Ceres, but if you want to change it, you can use the assist button here and change it to person. I don't know that this is really being used because people don't typically use quotes to then create agency orders. But if you were using quotes and you wanted to copy the cell-to information from the quote, then you could select whether you want it to be at the agency level or at the person level. The next fields, the tax fields here, you can see they're all grayed out. They're not currently being used by Ceres, so you can hide them if you want on your Invoicing FAST tab. The tax exemption number, this would be the agency's IRS tax exemption number, so if they have one and you want to keep track of that information, then you would enter it in this field. The general business posting group field, you can either set this, depending on whether you're using general business posting group as part of your general posting setup, then you would select whichever one is appropriate. If you're not using general business posting groups, then this field may be blank, and that's okay. But you want to make sure that you check to see if you're using general business posting groups. If you are, then you will see in the drop-down that there is general business posting group listed. In this case, we have only one, so we will select that one. And the combination of the general business posting group on the agency and the general product posting group from the item will determine which GL accounts will be hit when transactions associated with this agency are posted. So it's important that you have the general business posting group, if defined, assigned on the agency. If you don't use general business posting groups, then it will always use the information from the product, the item, the general product posting, to determine what GL accounts to hit. Alternatively, you also want to set up the agency posting group. So this is the AR side of it. And you would select the appropriate agency posting group to determine which GL account will be hit for the invoice dollar amount that the agency owes the food bank. So you would select the appropriate agency posting group. If you want more information about what's associated with these codes, you can click on the Advanced tab, and you can see what accounts are associated with each code. And this is the AR account that would be hit when an invoice for this agency is posted. The agency fee group field, this is only populated if you are using agency fee groups. And to see the fee group codes, you would click on the Assist button. And we don't have any agency fee groups set up in this particular database, but you can set up agency fee groups either by going to New here or by going to the actual setup for fee groups. And fee groups can be used to give alternate pricing to agencies rather than what the item normally would be, what the agency would normally be charged for an item. So if you wanted to give certain agencies, say, a 10% discount or not charge them anything, then you could set up agency fee groups, and then you could set up those same agency fee groups on the items themselves. And then if the agency has the same fee group as the item, then it will use that pricing for the agency. We don't really have time to go deep into it, but if you have specific questions about agency fee groups, you can always let us know, and we'll assist you with that. The agency discount group, this is also another assist option. We don't have any agency discount groups set up here, but the agency order line discount will depend on the agency and the item, and the size of the discount is determined by which agency discount group the agency belongs to and which item discount group the item belongs to. So it's an alternate option versus setting up fee groups for discounting product. Allow line discount. If this field is checked, contains a check mark, then Ceres will calculate a line discount whenever it's applicable for an agency. So if you use any type of discounts or plan on using any type of discounts, I would go ahead and check this box. It doesn't hurt anything if you're not using discounts, but if you do have this checked and you want to modify the fees on an agency order, then you should be able to do so with this checked. The prices including tax or VAT, not a field used by Ceres, so this probably won't show up on your screen, should be hidden. Prepayment percent, most food banks don't use this where they require prepayment of a percentage of an agency order before they distribute any of it. But if you wanted to set up prepayment percentages, this can be a percent that applies to all orders for this agency, regardless of the items or services on the agency order lines. So you would not enter the percent sign, you would simply enter the value. So if you wanted to require that they pay a 10% prepayment up front, then you would just enter 10. And then what that will do is it will create a additional invoice that has to be paid immediately for 10% of the overall amount. And they would not be able to, you wouldn't be able to go any further without them paying that 10% right away. Again, this is not typically used in the food banking world, but it is there in case you need it. Send to parent billing address. We don't have a parent agency assigned on this particular agency, but if we're using parent agencies and you want the bill to go to the parent agency address versus the actual agency address, then you would check this box right here. And that's the billing address. So there are addresses on the invoicing tab and there are addresses on the general tab. The general tab address would be the mailing address, and on the invoicing tab, that would be the billing address. Or I guess there's not a address on this tab. I know there is a place for billing address, and it would be on the parent card. So there's an option on the parent card for billing address versus mailing address. And then if you want the agency's invoices to go and statements to go to one of those addresses, then you would check the appropriate one here. Same with statement. Here's the send to parent statement address. So there's some options if you're using parent agencies on the parent agency card. and you would fill in that information, and then on the agency card, if you want it to go to the parent, you would select one of these, or multiple. The next tab is the Payments Task tab, and we'll go ahead and expand that here. The application method, this chooses how Ceres will apply payments that are made from this agency to outstanding invoices. To determine the application method, you have two options, manual or apply to oldest. We recommend manual because that way when a payment comes in from the agency, they don't always pay you for the oldest outstanding invoice, and they may pay you for part of one invoice and part of another invoice, or all of one and part of another. And so you want to make sure that you have full control over how you apply the payments to invoices, so select the application method of manual. In the Payment Terms Code field, click on the Assist. Here you would choose what due date is going to be assigned on an invoice when you post it. So if the posting date is today, is it going to be due? And you can set up as many payment terms codes as necessary. You can have a 0 days, like due on demand or whatever, cash on order. You can set up 5 days, 10 days, whatever the case may be. Here's a 7-day one. Here's an immediately. And then it will determine the calculation based on what you enter in the due date calculation field. So if you want it to be due 30 days after the posting date of the invoice, then you would select the appropriate payment terms code. And then when the new order is created, it takes the posting date of the order and it calculates the due date based on their payment terms. The payment method code, this does not need to be filled in necessarily, but if you click on the Assist button, you can see some payment terms or payment methods that have been set up in the system. Check, cash, auto payments, credit card. There might be a couple different ones you could set up. And this just basically identifies to you how the agency typically pays for their invoices, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they can't pay a different way. It's just the default way that they pay. And again, you don't have to set up anything here, but if you wanted to be able to run a report or even calculate, well, it wouldn't be calculating payments, but if you wanted to be able to run a report by how an agency pays, then you could set this up and then use that as a filter. The reminder terms and finance charge terms code, I don't know many food banks that send reminders or finance charge or apply finance charges. However, you certainly can. The reminder terms code will specify what information should be included on reminders that are sent to agencies and when reminders should be created. And you can create the reminder terms by going to New and then setting up your reminder terms. There's a code, a description, maximum number of reminders that would be sent, whether or not you would have interest or an additional fee, the minimum amount that they would be charged for their late payments. You can set those all up under reminder terms and then define that on the agency card. Finance charge terms, similar to reminder terms. Here you can set up a code for your finance charge, what the description is, what's the minimum amount, additional fee, interest rate, how do you want it to calculate. Of course, it gives me an error because you typically wouldn't pick that unless you set up a code. But you can do open entries, closed entries, all entries, etc., and fill in all this information. So if you think you want to go down that route where you start charging finance charges or anything like that, then you can get more information on how to set these up. Print statements field. This will indicate whether to include this agency when you print statements, but it doesn't mean that you can't print statements if this box is not checked. What this actually does is it kind of works as a filter. So when you're running the statements report, there is an option to say print statements equals yes. So you could filter your statements report for all agencies where print statements equals yes, and then you would only print those statements where the agency is going to get a printed statement. And then if you're doing ones for email statements, you could, if you have agencies that are marked with email statements equals yes, then you could run that report where email statements equals yes, and you would only get those that are being emailed. And it would just give you a report of the emailed ones, and it should send the email. So if you select email statements, then that means that you're going to be emailing the statement instead of printing it. And in order for that to happen, you must have set up the email address in the statement delivery email field on the Communications Fast tab before you can select this field. So if you didn't have a value or you don't have a value in the, where'd it go? Communication Fast tab, there we go. If you don't have a email in the statement delivery email, then it should error if you try to choose the email statements, and it did. It says you must enter an email address in the statement delivery email before selecting email statements. So if I hit refresh, then that goes away, but I don't have a checkbox in my email statements because I have to have a valid email address here in order to check that box. The last statement number field, if you're doing statements and you have numbers for them and you want to keep track, this field will display the number of the last statement that was printed for this agency. It doesn't specify here whether it will also update this value if you email statements. So I'm not sure if it does indeed update the last statement number field when email statements is selected. But if you are mailing statements and you have a last statement that's been mailed, it should update this last statement number. Block payment tolerance, this one's not typically used, but if you check this box, then it will indicate that payment tolerances are not allowed for this agency. And a payment tolerance basically means that you won't accept anything less or more than what the actual invoice amount is for the agency. And you would have to also set up payment tolerances in association with that. You don't typically need to block the payment tolerance. However, if you want to, you can check that box. On the Shipping Fast tab, so let's collapse that and that. On the Shipping Fast tab, we have the location code for the agency, and this is a default. If you're using responsibility centers or branches, you will also have an additional field on here for branch code. And if a food bank has several branches responsible for administration of different agencies, then you would enter the default branch code to designate which branch is available or is responsible for this agency. This one doesn't show branch because we're not using that setup in this particular database, but we are using location code. So we would select the appropriate location. And the territory, now the location code, this is an important field in that it's going to default on the agency order. So if you have product in multiple locations and you create a new order line and you go to put the item on the order, it will default this location from the agency on the order line. And if the product is not in that location, then the available quantity will show as 0. And it may be that you still want to give them the product, but you have to pull a different location onto the agency order line in order to see available quantity for that product. So just know that this is going to flow through to the agency order, and it will automatically populate the location on the agency order lines, which determines or is one of the determining factors for available quantity. The territory code, I don't know that it's typically used, but if you wanted to define territory codes, and as you can see, there's none entered here, but you could create territory codes and then assign a territory code to the agency on the Shipping Fast tab. The delivery zone code is more commonly used if the agency is typically a delivery agency. Then you would set up a geographic zone for deliveries and then assign that delivery zone to the agency card. And then this can be used for determining fees for deliveries based on a fee schedule, basically, that says, okay, if they're in this zone, then here's what they're charged for delivery fees. If they're in this zone, here's what they're charged. So there's a whole delivery fee thing that you can set up based on delivery zones. The delivery information tab, it doesn't look very big, but it can hold, I believe, gosh, I don't know if it holds 50 or 250 characters because it doesn't say on my cheat sheet here, but you can test it out, obviously. This will populate on the agency order on the web delivery FAST tab in the delivery information window. And basically it can be some information about always call so-and-so before delivering, or deliveries must be made to dock number 4, or any type of information that would be helpful to the person doing the delivery. You can put in the delivery information window, and like I said, it will flow to the agency order. And if you're printing delivery info on your agency invoices, then this information will print. Now, one caveat to that is that if you are using Agency Express, then information that the shopper enters in the comment section on Agency Express when they're doing orders will actually populate in the delivery information window on the order. So if you had information on the agency card and they write something in the comment section on their order on the web, when it populates in Ceres, it will overwrite the value from the agency with whatever they put in the comment section. So just be aware that that could potentially happen if you're using Agency Express. The default ship-to code field. A default ship-to code must be defined in order to use Agency Express, so you would not be able to check the Permit Web Orders box unless you have a default ship-to code. So it says that the agency group code must have a value in agency number 1. It cannot be 0 or empty. So in order to make an agency eligible for web ordering, they must have a value in the default ship-to code. So to create that, you would come here, go to New, and create a default ship-to code. Usually default works. And then, well, it gave me sorry. Can't do it that way. Have to go up to the related information and then go to agency and then ship-to addresses and set it up there. And then once you set up a default ship-to code, then you can define it here on the default ship-to code field, and it will allow you to mark the agency as Permit Web Orders. Okay, the combined shipments field. Do not check this if you're using Agency Express. I cannot stress that enough. You can't combine shipments because each agency order that's submitted on the web is unique. It has a unique PO number, and I don't believe that there's any way for that information once you've combined a shipment to send it back to update Agency Express. So if you're using Agency Express, don't use combined shipments. If you're not, or the agency is not a web permitted agency, and you want to be able to take whether several agency orders delivered to the same agency can appear on the same invoice, then you would check this box, and it will transfer a default of combined shipments to the agency order header. And of course, you can always uncheck it there. But when you invoice that agency, then there's a job called combined shipments, and it will only combine shipments for agencies that have a check mark here. And then let's say you had 3 shipments to that agency for the same day, it will then combine them onto one invoice. And I don't know if it has to be the same day, but if you're doing, one invoice for that agency, then it will combine all those shipments onto one invoice. But again, don't set that if you're using Agency Express, or if this agency is, I should say, if this agency is permitted for web ordering. Excuse me, I'm having to drink a lot of water. The RoadNet location type, if you're using RoadNet, then it's an optional field that can assist your food bank with filtering agency orders included in an export. So you would get more information on this if you're using RoadNet. Preferred delivery time and preferred pickup time. These are used when creating appointments as a default choice. If you have, this is separate from like standing appointments and things like that if you're using Agency Express. So this would just be more of a informational field. So if they have a preferred delivery time or preferred pickup time, you can type in text. So you could say Mondays, 10 a.m., or you can't because it tells me that it doesn't like that. It says it's not an acceptable value. Mondays 10 a.m. is not a valid time. So despite what I said, it actually means that you can only enter a time in this field. So if I enter 10:00, then it populates it with 10 a.m., whereas if I entered 1500, it populates with 3 p.m., and same with the deferred pickup time. So this is just a time field. Shipping advice field. This field will contain advice about whether the agency will accept a partial shipment of the order. This is something that happens all the time with agencies, right? They may order 100 of something, and they may order 50 of something else, and you may have available quantity for all those things when the order comes in, but maybe something happens to a pallet. It breaks open, it spoils, whatever the case may be. But you can't fulfill the entire quantity that they've ordered. If you had this set to complete, then you would never be able to invoice that order until you fully shipped the entire quantity that was ordered. So heaven forbid that would ever happen. So we suggest that you set the shipping advice to partial, and then that way you can still, excuse me, you can still post it through, even if you haven't shipped everything that they ordered, because we know that that rarely ever happens. Sometimes it does, and it's great, but there are times when you cannot possibly ship everything that was on the order. The shipment method code field, this is where you set the default shipment method code for the agency. So if you are using Agency Express, the only acceptable shipment methods are deliver and pickup, and those are associated with shipment or with the calendars. So you would select one of the shipment method codes. You can set up as many different shipment method codes as you desire. If you click on the Advanced tab, you can see additional information about shipment method codes, and you can see that they are associated with schedule template names. So it's really the schedule template that affects Agency Express, but you'll notice that, excuse me, this one is tied to the deliver schedule template name, and this one's tied to the pickup, and those go with calendars that go to Agency Express. Excuse me, just a second. My apologies. Okay, so if you're using Agency Express, just be mindful of that. If you're not using Agency Express, then you can use any shipment method that you desire. And you select that here, and it will flow to agency orders. The rest of these codes here, shipping agent code, shipping agent service code, populate those if desired if you're using deliver as a shipment method, for example. The shipping agent code could be the third-party shipping company that's used to deliver to the agency, or it could be food bank truck. If you deliver to the agency via a food bank truck, then you might set that as a shipping agent code. Not sure if we have any set up here. Yes, we do. So here's food bank truck, Federal Express, UPS, could have other options. And so typically this would only be if they're usually a delivery agency, then you would set that up. The shipping agent service code, this will specify the level to be used when shipping via a third-party shipping company. So if you have selected a shipping agent code of, say, FedEx, and then you will want to set their level of service, like 2-day priority or 3-day or ground or whatever the case may be, then you would set up a shipping agent service code. And you'll notice that there are some values here: code, description, shipping time, base calendar, etc. Not used by a lot of food banks, but bigger food banks may use the shipping agent service code if they're shipping by other means besides their own food bank trucks. The shipping time field. This field will contain the shipping time of an order. That is the time that it takes from when the order is shipped from the warehouse to when the order is delivered to the agency's address. Typically, we would hope that would be 1 day or less, right? But it could be 2 days. It could be more than that, depending on how far away the agency is from the food bank. And Ceres will use the shipping time field to calculate the planned delivery date and the promised delivery date on an agency order. And this, again, would only be for agencies that have shipment method code of deliver, because pickups are going to come straight to the food bank. So the base calendar code field, you would populate that if you're specifying a base calendar to be used for calculating the planned delivery date and promised delivery date. And you can set that up to show non-working days, holidays, etc. And there's not any setup here, but you would go there to set it up. Customized calendar says no. If you have set up a customized calendar, then this is going to say yes. The order handling group code and order routing group code fields, you may or may not have these. I'm not sure when those fields were added as part of what object update. But the order handling group code, this would be the group code that will flow to the agency order to enable the grouping and processing of orders based on preferred handling requirements. So you can set up an order handling group, and then based on that order handling group, certain people might be handling those orders. You can also set up batches to handle that. So you can use this, or you can use the order batches if you desire, or in combination, you certainly could. Order routing group code, this is basically the same as order handling. It will flow to the agency order to enable the grouping and processing of orders based on predefined routing requirements. I don't have a lot more information on these two fields, so if you're curious about them and want more information, you can let me know, and I can always reach out and see what other information is available on those too. The staging area field here, this will be a staging area that will flow to an agency order as a default staging area to be used when staging for a pick. If the create pick by field is set on if the create pick by field on the location card is blank. So if the location code, which is assigned here, has no value in the create pick by field, then you will use the staging area. If you're actually using staging areas, then you would select something here. If you're not using staging areas, then no point in filling in this information or setting it up. All right, there are some other tabs that are currently not being used. The Foreign Trade Fast tab, it's hidden. I've also hidden the Kitting Fast tab. However, if you are using Kitting, there is information on the Kitting Fast tab that needs to be set up in order to use Kitting for the agency. So you would want to make sure that you display the Kitting Fast tab. And in the document that I'll send associated with this training, there's information on that about the Kitting Fast tab. So I'm not going to go over it because we don't have enough time, but just know that that information is available and will be in the document. On the Information Fast tab, which I consider, along with the General Fast tab, Invoicing, Payments, etc., one of the very important fast tabs of the agency card. The Permit Web Orders, again, if you're using Agency Express and you want to permit an agency for web ordering, they must have a default ship-to code. They must have an agency group code defined that will determine what items they can get on the web. And if they have a agency group code defined and they have a default ship-to code defined, then you can check this box. I'm not going to check it because I would get an error message because I have not yet defined a default ship-to code for this agency. But once those are both defined, then you can check Permit Web Orders. Service areas, this is just a field that describes the area serviced by the agency. It's for informational purposes. You can add up to 150 characters here to identify the service area or areas that the agency services. Product sources, informational as well. You can describe agencies' product sources, like do they get donated food, do they get purchased food, do they get CSFP, TFAP, USDA. It's informational as well. You can enter up to 150 characters here to show what product sources this agency has access to. It's not the same as setting up qualifiers. So if you want to qualify them on the agency group for those types of foods, then you would set up the agency group and the qualifiers. But this is, again, just for informational purposes. Funding sources, similar to that, describes the agency's funding sources. If you know where they get their funding and you want to include that information on the agency card, then you would set it here in the funding source field. Up to 150 characters are allowed here as well. Client records maintained, you would check this box if you want to indicate whether the agency maintains client records. So if you know if the agency keeps a list of their client records, then you would check this box. Again, informational purposes here. So if you wanted to see all the agencies that maintain records and you've checked this box, then you could filter a list of agencies by client records maintained equals yes, and you would see only those agencies where a checkbox is or where check mark is in this field. UNC Food Bank ID number. This field, these three fields right here are very important. If you have an agency that is another food bank, you would identify them by their UNC Food Bank ID number. So you would select the appropriate UNC Food Bank ID number from the UNC Food Bank ID table. And if the agency is another food bank, then when you distribute to that agency, pounds that you've distributed to that agency will not be included on the distribution pounds by county report if there's a value in this field. Because what is going to happen is that when that agency then distributes the food to their constituents, the pounds will show on their distribution report because they're the ones that are actually doing the final distribution of the product. If you were to report that pounds as being distributed to this agency and then they also reported those pounds distributed to their constituents, then you would be double reporting the pounds distributed to Feeding America. So that's why agencies that are other food banks need to have the appropriate ID field populated on the agency card. And it's important that you have that done before you start distributing to that agency. Now, it's possible that the agency may not be a UNC Food Bank ID or have one when you start distributing to them, but then at some point in time they do become a UNC Food Bank. And at that point you would then add their UNC Food Bank ID here, but know that previous distributions to them would have been considered as distributing to an agency. So on the QPR report, they would show up in the distributed to agencies section, and they would also show up in the correct county as long as your FEC county code was identified when distributing, when running the distribution pounds by county report. However, as soon as you identify them as another food bank, then those additional pounds that are distributed under that food bank ID will not be included on the distribution pounds by county report. And on the QPR, or the receipts and distribution report, they will show up, instead of under distributed to agencies, they will now show up in distributed to other food banks. Or I forget what the actual line says on there, but on the distributions page, it breaks it down by whether it's distributed to agencies, distributed cluster. I think it's distributed to other members is probably what it says. So this field here is very critical in where and if pounds to this agency are included on certain reports. SDO, this used to be Satellite Distribution Organization. It's been updated to be partner distribution or regional, or is it regional? I forget now because I don't have it listed here. But there's RDO, PDO, SDO. If you have a checkbox here, then that means that this agency is a member of either a partner distribution or satellite distribution organization. And those pounds also, I believe, are excluded from the distribution pounds by county report. I would have to look at the filters for that report just to confirm that, but I believe that they are also excluded. And if you are running the receipts and distribution, aka QPR report, those pounds are not going to show up on the report unless you actually type in on the options tab what distributions were sent out to that. So you actually have to calculate them yourself and then tell it that you want those values to report on the QPR because they won't by default display on there. The food bank program field, if you check this box, this means that this is a direct serve agency, so you don't send the pounds to an agency and then have them distribute those pounds to their programs or their constituents, but you distribute them directly. So if you set this as food bank program, then it's like a brown bag agency or direct serve agency, and that means that you are actually distributing the food directly from the food bank to those people are part of this agency. Statement URL, this is not really being used if you're using Agency Express and you want to set up a specified place to store your statements, a URL address that's open to the web, to the portal, then they would be able to see their statements online via the statement URL. A whole bunch of other setup that has to be done for that. So just know that that's what that field is for. Geographical location code, you can use the Assist button and select if there are any available, or you can create new ones. This would be representing the geographical location that the agency is located in. Not necessary to populate that unless you want to. Same with metropolitan area code. Again, you can create or select a metropolitan area code to identify the area the agency is located in. FBC size code, sometimes it's nice to know if the agency is a small agency, a medium-sized agency, a large, extra large, and you can set up as many codes as you need to identify the size of your agencies, and that might help you determine, like, if you're limiting product based on size, then you can say, okay, well, this is a medium-sized agency, so I'm going to create some limits by size. So if they're medium-sized, they get this amount, so on and so forth. So you would set up the FBC size code by going to New, or by setting it up from the main menu and then selecting from the list when you use the Assist button. Mobile pantry. If your agency is a mobile pantry, then you would check this box. When you're running reports and you want to see distributions just to mobile pantries, then you can use a filter of mobile pantry equals yes. And if the mobile pantry field is checked on the agency card, then you will get results for all of those agencies that have that criteria. C-Mobile related, this is a field that will indicate agencies that are displayed on C-Mobile handheld devices. So if you're using handheld devices and C-Mobile ones, then you would check this box, and then it would allow this agency to be displayed on a handheld device. I don't know a lot of information about that field, so if you are using C-Mobile handheld devices and have questions, I can certainly get that information for you if necessary. Exclude from compliance. You would check this field to exclude the agency from compliance reporting updates. Agencies that are checked as excluded from compliance will not be checked for compliance when reporting on past due, and their status will remain unchanged by the process. So there's a UNC activity status by group document that's available, I think, on the HungerNet web page that you can access and get more information about excluding from compliance or compliance reporting. Federal Congressional District Code, State Congressional District Code, Senate District, City Council District, Ward, School District. If these things are important to you to track, then you would populate these fields. Otherwise, they are not necessary to be populated. And they're pretty self-explanatory. There is a state-specific FAST tab, which I'm not showing here, that is mostly used for HIPNAP. So if your food bank is required to report for HIPNAP, which I believe is like a New York, New Jersey thing, then you would have the state-specific FAST tab showing. The 501c3 FAST tab, again, I'm not displaying that here, but if you have 501c3 information about the agency and you need to populate that, then you would want to make sure that you're displaying that FAST tab. So 501c3, I'm going to add it here, and it's going to reopen my card. And now I have the 501c3 FAST tab showing. So you can identify the 501c3 number for the agency. So if they are 501c3 and you need to track that information, you can fill in the 501c3 number in this field. And the rest of these fields on the FAST tab pretty much look like they're grayed out. I don't know if they ungray out if I type in a number here, but I don't think they do. So it doesn't look like there's any other information that you can apply for those fields. I'm basically out of time, but there's a lot more information available on the agency. You can go to Related Information Agency and then access a wealth of information. You can also go to the Distributions drop-down and see additional information as well from there. One thing I wanted to mention, you can see that I have some information on the right-hand side here. If you want to see ledger entries that are associated with an open balance, you can click on this field here, or you can click on the balance field over here and see that information. If you want to see orders that have been shipped but not yet invoiced, then you can click on this link here and it will take you to those. So feel free to play around with the status bars on the right hand, or the status information on the right hand side, which I'm showing because I have fact boxes displayed. So if I don't want to show all of those fact boxes, I can remove them, and then only the fact box that I've selected will display. If you don't want to show any fact boxes at all, then you would simply hide all of them. So you can customize the agency card however you want, as well as customizing the agency list. But it's based on what's available to choose for customization. So to choose columns, you have a list of available columns and what columns you want to show and in what order. So you can play with that as well and make it customized to yourself. It won't be the same on someone else's screen, just your own. So since I'm pretty much out of time, is there anyone that has any burning question? I know we had someone who joined late. This information will be available as a recorded training, and once that information is available, we'll get that sent out to where that will be located. All right, looks like Louie's got to run. Does anybody have a question? If you do, you can either unmute yourself or put a little question in the chat box, and I'll be happy to answer that. Otherwise, thank you very much for attending, and like I said, this will be available probably within the next week or so as a web training. All right, I will go ahead and stop recording. Everybody have a great day.